You ever seen one of these? Not many men have. Got out the first one I killed. The plane was better. So now you're a dragon killer. It's not even original. It was in the wheat fields just south of Coffeeville, Kansas. It's late November. It's a month of mist. We were caught in the open. The sun was setting behind us. There's nowhere to run. Twice it came in on us, and twice it missed the heart of us. And that's when I had an epiphany. You see, they have great vision in the day. They have even better vision at night. But in the failing light, they can't focus. Magic hour. Coffeeville. It's etched in American history because the outlaw Dalton boys were killed there. Ordinary townsfolk rose up and took them down. Maybe you're the Dalton boys. No. We're the townsfolk.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong.
All right.
Alright.
That sounded like a Christian Bale.
Oh,
I know.
Oh, alright.
All right. There you go. And it was going for the Christian Bale, which
I
is
like it.
weird because I should have defaulted to a Matthew McConaughey like you.
It's okay.
You should go for good John Butler.
Hey.
That was that Gerard Butler?
I don't know.
Do it again. Let's hear
I'm
it.
so lost.
I'm Reese. To my left is...
David.
To my further left.
Irina.
Across from me...
Noah.
Oh, you didn't have one. Didn't have one.
No, I haven't. I just didn't do it.
Just do it.
Do another one.
Sorry, what was that?
It's a dragon sleeping.
Oh, okay.
Also known as...
Noah.
And off in a distant land, we have...
AJ.
How's it over there in London?
That's kind of cloudy,
Okay.
kind of
Chance of
misty, kind of
meatballs.
foggy, kind of ashy, kind of,
Scorched.
yeah.
And today we are talking about Reign of Fire.
The Rain of Fire.
2002 film directed by Rob Bowman, who also directed the X-Files movie, along with many episodes from the X-Files. Elektra, the sequel or sidequel or spin-off to Daredevil.
The movie you never saw.
And lots of other TV shows, which I did not list here, but he's more known for his TV work than he is his filmography.
So he's been around the block, though.
He's been around the block. Mm-hmm. The movie stars Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale, Isabella Scorupco, I'm assuming I said that right?
Sure.
And Gerard, or do you also say Gerard or Gerard Butler?
Jared.
I've also heard it both ways. Gerard
Jared.
Butler. The movie's written by Matt Greenberg, Greg Chabot, and Kevin Paterka.
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 All right, we're not going anywhere with that one.
Sounds like a. That sounds
How
like
about
a.
that Vangelis
you know,
soundtrack?
Wait. Vangelis again? Blade Runner?
Oh.
Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, that's the only other Vangelis.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. Okay, you watch Chariots of Fire, we watch Rain of Fire. We'll,
You may have gotten a better soundtrack.
we'll tackle both these movies, I
We'll
guess.
see where they overlap.
Yeah. On this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, guys, had y'all seen Reign of Fire before this episode? AJ, I'm going to go with you first this time.
Yes, I had, and I don't know how to describe it without tipping my hand too early, but I think it's a underrated movie. We'll just leave it at that.
Yes. Noah.
I saw this a while ago. Long time ago. I can't remember
long ago.
But I remember quite liking it because I love dragons. And this movie has cool dragons.
So Noah, you like dragons?
I love dragons.
Nice.
Well, let me drag. Never mind. Not going for it.
Arena.
Sorry.
Dragging these nuts.
I had seen this movie before, and probably quite a few times after that as well. I don't remember my first experience watching it, but I do remember being very surprised that I hadn't heard of it before. So,
Yeah. David.
I'd never seen this movie before. It's also one of those ones I never really heard of. Recently, I saw it on some YouTube stuff.
Corridor Crew.
Corridor Crew, without realizing it was Reign of Fire. So, but I've heard a lot of good things. So, yeah.
About the effects, at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Corridor Crew at least. But from other people, when I brought it up, they're like, oh yeah, that movie. So, one of those weird. It's similar to Master and Commander, where I never heard of it, and I'm surprised I never heard of it because it has so many big names. Oh wait, I did see the pictures of Matthew McConaughey though with the bald head. Like I did see that thrown around in memes and all sorts of stuff. But no, never saw it.
It's weird, but I feel like that's one of his best looks.
Yes,
I agree.
I don't know why, but
He
it
is,
just
he is the most
works.
transformed in this compared to many of his other.
So fun fact though about his look. Apparently he shaved his entire head because he started to go bald, or he was like noticing. So he's like, I'm just gonna shave it off and like let that look.
Really?
Yeah.
Yet he's still got a pretty decent sized amount of hair.
I guess
I know that's why
his
it.
mind
And
since
you know what?
then.
Maybe IMDb facts is wrong, but that's where I saw that. And I just
Dude,
thought it
this
was
is
funny.
That's where you need to take your inspiration from. Then, yeah. He thought he was balding. You think you're balding?
I am balding.
Turns out he's got a full head of hair still.
Hey, you said
You're
this was
from
his best
Austin.
look.
You're from Austin. He's from
Hey
Austin.
man, you got a joint? Be a lot cooler if you did.
That didn't even go with what was happening.
I'm just trying to throw in all the Matthew McConaughey jokes,
I'm
man.
enjoying all this forced humor. It's,
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Are you not
Anyway,
enjoying yourself?
I had also seen this movie, but not when I wanted to. It was a movie I really wanted to see in the theaters because I had seen the poster, which was so cool. It had a dragon up front and center and London burning in the background. It said Reign of Fire, and I was like, Reign of Fire? That's not how you spell rain. And then I learned about the word rain.
And Reese
Play on
learned how to
words.
read.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good title.
And I was big into dragons and fantasy too. So, but for some reason, I wasn't able to convince my parents to take me to the theater to see it. So it was
Gotcha.
pretty much like a first thing rental the moment it came out. Watched it.
Yeah.
My first impression of it wasn't as amazing as I had hyped it up to be in my mind, but it was still a movie that I told myself I liked, even though I didn't enjoy it as much as I said I liked it.
Yeah.
But we'll see if that opinion has changed.
I can see as a kid how it wouldn't meet the same feel as the commercials probably showed it to be. Because
Yeah.
kids like dragons, right? But this isn't exactly a kid's dragon movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
Is it a dragon
So-
or is it a wyvern?
A wyvern.
Wyvern, it's got only 2 legs versus a dragon, which has 4.
Wait, so what? Are there multiple different kinds of dragons, though?
Wyvern's not a dragon, David.
Wait, is it not? I thought it was just a different name for like a different style of dragon.
It's they're related. It's like a lizard and a
Gecko.
newt. Or
honestly,
something.
all are true because the origin of the term dragon just came from early Greek and Roman words, which basically meant large serpent. So
Yeah.
it didn't actually belong to anything mythological to begin with.
Interchangeable then.
Yeah, but it started being adopted for mythological large serpent creatures.
So did they always have bat wings?
No.
All right, y'all ready to get into the story?
Yes.
Everybody out there, if you are listening right now and you are really enjoying what you're hearing, please, if you could, if
Not
you
likely
want,
on this one.
yeah, not likely.
I'm just kidding.
If you're really into dragons and hearing us fumble our way through it, please find any way to give us a rating, comment, subscribe. We have our YouTube channel. We also have a Instagram where you can follow. But
Twitter.
yeah, Twitter. We have a new Twitter account now. And if you go on Apple Podcasts, throw us a 5-star review because it all helps bump us up in the ratings. And that's
Right.
what we want.
A creature has been awakened that has lain dormant for millions of years. A species older than the dinosaurs and more terrifying than anything we could have imagined.
How did they go from 1 to a million in less than a year?
Highly evolved.
They have great vision in the day. They have even better vision at night.
Extremely intelligent.
He's playing hide and seek. More like cat and mouse.
Unbelievably powerful.
2 glands in the mouth secrete separate chemicals.
Combine exhalation, natural napalm.
Good luck.
Now, one will protect them,
We have to hang on, work together.
and one will lead them.
There's nothing magical about it. They're made of flesh and blood. You take out their heart, you bring down the beast.
We found out where they started. We're going to London.
This summer,
Vertical one up.
the plan is set.
1,600 yards, closing fast.
The arsenal has been assembled.
Get ready to rock and roll. Each other!
And they've got one chance to take back their world. Matthew McConaughey, Christian Bale. Reign of Fire.
At an unspecified date in the early 21st century during construction on the London Underground, workers penetrate a cave and a huge dragon emerges from hibernation, incinerating the workers with its breath. The only survivor is a boy, Quinn Abercrombie, whose mother, Karen, the construction crew chief, is crushed to death protecting him. The dragon flies out of the underground, and soon more dragons appear. It is revealed through newspaper clippings and the narration that dragons are the species responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. They are speculated to hibernate after destroying most living creatures until the planet repopulates. Mankind's militaristic resistance, including nuclear weapons in 2010, only hastens the destruction, and by 2020, humans are nearly extinct. Quinn leads a community of survivors at Bamberg Castle, Northumberland. They are starving while awaiting harvest. Although most trust Quinn, some are restless and defiant. Eddie and his group steal a truck to pick tomatoes, though it is too soon for harvest. They are attacked by a dragon. One man is killed and the rest are surrounded by fire. Quinn, Creedy, and Jared rescue them with old fire engines, but the dragon kills Eddie's son before escaping. Alright, so the opening of this film takes place, 2008, somewhere around there?
In the first,
it's present
when he's
day.
a kid, it's 2008. Yes.
Yeah. Quinn, this kid has... The writing on this kid is so weird because it's like that quippy adult humor of coworkers, and he's just throwing around these lines, but it's so like...
Okay, well, how old would you say he is in this?
Probably like
8?
Yeah, so he's definitely under 10, and he's walking around this work site, which is like, I don't know if they say exactly what it is, but it's kind of like a mining setup in a way.
It's a quarry.
But he's walking, it's like, hey, yeah, I'm just going to go down to the basement and hang out and get some work done. Hey, like, he could have been a 20-year-old, like, starting a shift, and it would have been the same thing.
I know, I think that's what they were trying to... the actor, the kid, I didn't think quite pulled it off. But it's so brief, it doesn't really matter.
So whenever I was watching it, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, I guess I could see that, but I could also imagine a kid acting that way.
Yeah.
Like,
it wasn't bad.
Especially
If you
this
grew up in
kind
that
of kid
environment.
who's... Yeah, exactly. Who grew up in the environment where he's probably often going to see his mom who's at work. His dad's out of the picture.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised they allowed him entrance into this, newly
Yeah.
opened drill hole.
Oh, wait, okay, well, that is mainly because there's some weird worker who's like, yeah, go check it out. I'm like, really?
And then leaves him there.
Like, this is underground. Some people have hard hats on, and you're just going to send this kid into this random cavern you just went into?
The funny thing is, he's literally the first person to enter that, I'm assuming, because
Yeah.
a worker would have seen that there was a dragon in there if he had gone in before him.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
pretty much front and center. The moment you walk through that hole, it's like, oh, there's a dragon.
I think the point of that was that this dude's a scumbag that he was dealing with. Because when he comes down to that area, the guy is...
I don't think he was a scumbag.
Oh, he definitely
Well,
was. He was talking crap about his mom when
Yeah.
he came in.
Maybe his mom sucks. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe she's bad at her
Maybe,
job.
but the point was he was calling her like,
Or
Yes,
maybe
I
this
know. I'm
dude
just
doesn't respond well to
obscenities and-
female authority.
and then he was like, check this out. And
Yeah, he was a very dumb employee, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Anyway, as kind of awkward as the setup for this dragon, submergence is, not submergence, that's the wrong word.
Emergence.
Yes. It still it leads to a really cool sequence of the dragon chasing them up the elevator, just blowing fire. And one thing you'll notice, at least with the cinematography and the effects, is they're so good at just showing enough to where you don't really see the kinks in the CGI's armor. Like you can tell it's CGI, but it's like they cloak it just enough to where it's like
A lot of it's in shadow.
It's convincing, and that's a sign of what is to come later in this movie as well.
Play your strengths. That's what they
Yeah.
were doing.
Yeah, the CGI work in this is realistic and impressive for the time, and we'll delve into that much later,
Yeah.
or not much later, but
Yeah,
later
yeah,
on. So yeah, fast forward to how many years later was it?
I thought it was 20 or
Yeah,
something.
It was
20 years.
2020. No, it wasn't 20 years later. It was 2020 because it's 2008 in the beginning, so it jumps up 12 years.
no, I think he says it's been.
So I was looking
number
this
of
up. I think
years.
there are some weird things with it, but it specifically said 2020.
Yeah, I know it shows the year 2020.
Yeah.
That would put Christian Bale at a very young age.
He is, yeah. It's like mid to early 20s. Or
Actually,
mid
he would
to late
have to
20s.
be exactly 20, and he certainly does not look.
An
like
argument
he's 20.
can be made for the kid being 10 and he's 30.
Yeah.
So-
There was also something about.
No. If it's 2008 to
22.
2000, if it's 2008 to 2020, that's 12 years.
Yeah. So I did see something online about the years being muddied a little bit. They talked about it being farther than it was, but then they showed 2020, so it's a little weird. But as far as I'm aware, it was 2020.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not terribly important.
It isn't.
But I'm this movie, the timing of it was perfect to land all of these actors in it. And I know we're not at Matthew McConaughey yet, but you've got Christian Bale, Jared Butler, Matthew McConaughey,
Yeah.
3 soon-to-be A-listers not long after this movie. So I think they really lucked out.
They did. I remember reading that, was it Jared Butler and Christian Bale were barely known at the time. Matthew McConaughey was like the big name in this movie when it came out.
He had been in romantic comedies before this, mostly.
And then they saw him in this and they're like, whoa.
Yeah.
But not too many. I think he really hit the romantic comedy train like a couple years after this.
Failure to launch, stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think the director and the team behind this movie did a really good job of establishing this world, but not, being too exploitative about, how everything works.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is a post-apocalypse. Dragons are all over.
Yeah.
I think I was telling Irina, it was a very simple concept to get behind. They didn't try to make it super complicated. Like, this is post-apocalyptic. People are hiding. There are dragons. And people
Simple
are
as
trying
that.
to survive.
It's this movie, as I was watching it, it strikes me as a even balance between Mad Max and like a zombie movie, like Dawn of the Dead or something.
I was
28
thinking
days
Mad
later.
Max, too.
Yeah, it's like a zombie movie, but sub out the zombies
Yeah.
and enter dragons.
It's definitely
Like-
very Mad Max. Also, can I real quick say, I just looked it up for the sake of the audience. Quinn, when he's young, he's 12 years old. And then this takes place 20 years later.
Okay, 32. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Cleared
Told you
that
it was
up.
20 years later.
So how's everyone feeling at this point in the film? Are y'all enjoying yourselves?
Invested.
Yeah.
I am. I think for me, it was a little quick, but that I quickly forget about that later because I think the pacing for the rest of the film works really well.
Yeah, this movie moves. Like it's I don't remember it being this quick pace. For some reason, what was I on when I first saw this movie thinking it was
You were a kid.
slower?
That's why. I feel like it's
Yeah.
not the same kind of action adventure you expect when you see dragons.
Yeah.
It's darker and not the same kind of thing you're used to, I'm sure.
I think that it does a really good job for a movie that is about dragons, focusing more on the people and their problems, and then kind of teasing the dragons here and there, where you're always catching them either in mist or fog, just kind of their shadows. It's a cool enough shot. And not to mention, I love the way they handle the movement of these dragons too. It's
Yeah.
just very lifelike, and it almost reminds me of, like, I think of bats, like the way they fly, but kind of
they're
slowed
using
down.
yeah.
So it's
Using their
it's
wings
really cool.
as front arms to move
Yeah.
too.
And fire.
Yeah.
But not just the fire,
Not just
kind of the
any
way
fire.
that they hunt humans is
Yeah.
unique.
I also love how this movie doesn't glamorize the dragon.
Yeah.
It seems of the earth. Like
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it doesn't stand out. It stands out because it's still, you don't
It's a frickin'
see
dragon.
a dragon.
Yeah.
But it seems like it makes sense with the surroundings that it's in.
Yeah.
It's like an animal that we
Yeah.
just don't understand and is
Yeah.
they treat that really realistically and well.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, because the thing that this movie did differently from other representations of dragons was turned it into basically an animal and almost like a really large pest, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Parasite.
it's you think they're really cool, but at the same time incredibly frustrating, and you can feel the threat of it. Whereas in another movie, you don't care whether it's scorching people. You're just like, yeah, dragons. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one potential issue that I feel like starts to show with this film early on is that I don't think there's a lot of character development, particularly from Quinn. You do kind of get, there's this mother-son relationship that's kind of established, and he's kind of really scarred from that. But apart from that, you don't get much of a sense of who he is, other than the fact that he's really protective of his, clan of people.
Yeah.
But I just don't find him to be a particularly interesting character.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and the thing is, the pacing, you don't need to focus on it too much, and you get enough to go off of based on how he treats the kids, because multiple times you see him, I'm going to wake up the kids, I'm going to help the kids, or I'm going to do a Star Wars skit for them.
Yeah.
I love the Star
It
Wars.
was great. But it shows that he's very dedicated to helping the people there, so you get that, but that's pretty much it.
I love that moment where the kids are like, did you make all that up? And he's like, of course I did.
Star Wars...
I don't know. I didn't have any problem with the character development. I thought they did a lot more with this kind of movie than they do in others like it.
Yeah, I'm with Noah. Like all those examples you just listed, like the Star Wars play and the praying and the children and how he interacts with everyone around him, like those are prime nuggets of character development, just because they don't necessarily show his, full montage of his growing up and where he is. Like character development takes different forms, and those things, he's a character that is defined by his role in his society that he's in now.
Yeah.
So I thought the character development was on point.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe what I was looking for was more of him with his mom as a kid. Now I'm actually drawing an automatic connection to him as Batman, whereas like his mom dies pretty much right there and you don't know her at all and it didn't matter. So maybe that's not even the problem. So I don't know. I think he becomes more interesting when he's pitted against Quinn or Van Zandt later on. But yeah, it's just...
Well, to me, that was... that also is interesting character development, but the first part is its own character development in that, he's very protective of his people and his and the children. He's got a very gentle spirit, and yet he's willing to throw hands when he needs to. But then later it comes out and it brings another side to him with this antagonism with Van Zandt.
Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's kind of not an issue.
I think we're also establishing the world. Like we're showing the outside, what they're surrounded by, even the preparations of. I think the focus is saying, hey, they're living as refugees. They're hiding. They're just barely, hanging on by a thread. And I actually really enjoyed the development of the safety systems with all the water and that kind of building of the base and the structure of
that was
how
so
they're,
cool, actually.
Just scrounging. And so I think that was what their focus was, establishing the world and the environment and the context of which they're, the struggle that they're in.
Yeah.
And, so character development of an individual is probably a secondary focus for that.
Yeah.
Okay, then maybe what I want is not exactly to change his character. Maybe I want the slightly extended version of this before, crap hits the fan, maybe 10 more minutes on this settlement before all the action happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I could see that.
I
Yeah.
honestly think a lot of it comes down to his personality. It's not over the top. I think when you see someone like Van Zandt later, he's so over the top. He has a lot of personality just in the way he's coming across to the audience, the way he talks to people. Whereas Christian Bale's more subdued, but that doesn't mean he has less character development. I just think that he's more of a subtle character.
Yeah, and I kind of got the sense that he's one of those guys that is thrust into leadership by necessity, not that he chose it himself.
I
Yeah.
definitely
So
got
he's
that
forced
sense as well.
to step up
Yeah.
to the plate, even though it's not his
Yeah.
nature to take that step
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I think because his character has a really large heart, and not everyone in a apocalyptic setting is willing to take on more than just themselves to provide for. So he's like, well, all of these people are being kind of cast to the wayside, so I'm going to be sort of the father of all in a way and look out for every single one of them.
Before we move on to the story, I also want to compliment this movie on its atmosphere and tone, because I feel like it really establishes just how dangerous of a world they live in today, and just how tooth and nail everything is.
Yeah.
I never got the sense that these dragons or the life that these people were living was something that was easily survivable.
Yeah.
So kudos to that. We can move on if y'all want.
And well, on top of that, the kind of design of the characters too, and just how everyone's dressed it's very practical. It's very
So I know exactly what you mean. Irene and I were talking about this because a lot of movies in apocalyptic times like this feels almost like it's still a set costume.
Yeah.
Whereas these feel like they were lived in and they've been living in the same clothes for like a year. Like
you
muddy
can
and
almost smell
dirty.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and not only that, whenever the the Van Zandt and all of his people come in, they have their own kind of look too. They're very just, puffed up chest.
Yeah, and what's so, and we'll get to that actually, but I have things to say on that as well. All right. The Kentucky Irregulars, a group of Americans led by Denton Van Zandt, arrive in an armored convoy with a Chieftain tank and an August Westland AW-109 utility helicopter, the latter of which is piloted by Alex Jensen. Van Zandt has a system for hunting dragons and knows their weakness: poor vision during twilight. With Quinn's help, Van Zandt, Alex, and their team hunt and slay the dragon who destroyed the crops. The survivors enjoy a celebration at the castle that night, but Van Zandt is embittered by the loss of 3 of his men. Van Zandt and Alex tell Quinn that all the dragons they have found have been female. The Americans believe there is only one male. If they kill it, the dragons can no longer reproduce. Although Quinn knows about the male dragon, which killed his mother, he refuses to help.
I like how they specified what kind of helicopter it was, as if that means anything to anybody.
Hey, it matters, okay?
Yeah,
They
well,
could have just said
I
they flew a helicopter and that would have been enough for me.
they gotta know. Those helicopter enthusiasts.
The
There you
AW-109.
go.
What kind of helicopter?
Anyway, let's talk some Matthew McConaughey here. This is a performance.
Yeah.
One could easily say it's a little over the top and claim that it doesn't work, but I would push completely against that.
Yeah.
I think it totally works with a man who has been battling dragons pretty much ever since all this went down, has killed dragons and knows how to do it.
Like he's got a little bit of those crazy eyes, but he
100%.
knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He survived for a reason.
Yeah, like take
Yeah.
Brad Pitt's character from Inglourious Bastards and then just tone him down and make him more practical and realistic. And I think we have similar.
Yeah.
Like he's a hero that doesn't want to be your hero, but he's he's seen some stuff, and he is over the top. But it's that force of nature that requires him to be. You have to be slightly insane to do what he does.
Yeah.
and he is.
He's the perfect opposition to Quinn, I think.
Yeah.
They're fighting for the same team, but they're on completely opposing ends of that.
Yeah.
Where Quinn likes to hunker down and keep people safe, and
Offensive versus defense. That's
Yeah.
what we're going with here.
yeah, and Van Zandt is open. He will leave himself open if it gives him an opportunity to kill a dragon. He will put himself in a vulnerable position because he knows that the only way that they're ever going to get through this is to take out the dragons.
And Quinn
yeah.
comes to realize the same thing, actually, in himself.
Van Zandt is win the fight, and Quinn is survive the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just the thing I love about this allowing them into their shelter is for me, I really did feel that tension. Even though having seen this movie before, I know how it turns out. I still feel the tension of allowing a new unknown group of people that are very militaristic coming into your base with your people like that. And I recognize that as very much a zombie movie trope too, where you're all like, okay, new people in the apocalypse. I like having more numbers and more guns, but at the same time, these people look a little shifty, and I don't know what they're going to do to me.
yeah.
And yet, to me, this was more tense than most of the zombie ones.
It
Because
was.
usually in those, you're just, well, someone's going to mess up and zombies are going to break in.
There's going to be a fight.
But in this one, they set it up just right where you still don't know if Van Zandt is actually against them or not.
Yeah.
We figure out pretty quickly, though, because this movie moves fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah, so they go out on a caravan, and of course, ultimately lets him in to their encampment.
Yeah.
And there's pretty much friction right off the bat between his people and theirs after his people are killed. They do take out a dragon, but 3 of his men are killed in that pretty cool aerial sequence,
Very cool.
which honestly, I think there's movies that have taken influence from that today. Like you think about
Mission Impossible.
Godzilla 2014. It had that sequence where they're airdropping and they have the red streaks coming from their feet.
Oh, yeah.
Star
Just like in
Trek.
this. Yep, Star Trek. And yeah, Mission Impossible, that one as well. But I think Mission Impossible is a little different.
Actually, and Batman in the third movie, the Dark Knight Rises. I feel like they had a plane sequence where they jumped out.
I
Yeah,
don't remember.
maybe.
I'm more referring to like there's a monster involved in the aerial
I was thinking
sequence.
more of just aerial sequences in general. Planes.
All aerial
People are
sequences.
jumping out.
But yeah, I definitely think Godzilla 2014 would not have had a scene quite like that without Rain of Fire
Yeah.
doing it first.
The weird thing is, one of the scenes that's really effective is seeing this, watching the screen of the dot of that man hitting the ground. It's the weird thing is, to me, that's more effective than actually seeing it
Yeah,
happen.
you imagine what
where
happened
you're
to
just
his
like,
body.
oh no. You get a brief glance of his trajectory, like where he's hitting, and then you see the image of his little dot, his red dot, like just hitting the ground, and you cringe inside and just
That parachute did not deploy.
Nope.
And one of the cool moments that they pay off in the end is started here when they're partying afterwards. And Van Zandt gives that speech, that impassioned speech where he's got tears in his eyes, but it's
Yeah.
very, and he gives Quinn the directive. He's like, "I lead, you follow."
Yeah.
This is a cool start to their relationship because then
Yeah.
that flips and he says, "I follow you.
You lead, I'll follow."
And it was that was
Or will follow.
yeah. And
I loved that. That was great.
And how,
Throw back to the fight real quick with the dragon. They also had a really cool moment where Quinn notes that something's wrong because he's listening onto their comms, and he realizes what the issue is. They need to get the tracker up or whatever it's
to
called.
triangulate the map, or 3D mapping of the ground or something.
Yeah,
like
whatever it is. So he gets on horseback, rides out there, and notices the guy's dead and sets the thing up. And then shortly after, Van Zandt saying whatever that guy's name was, like, "Hey, you there? You there?" And the dude's
Quinn.
a Crisp. And Quinn responds. He's like, he's dead. And then the guy's like, "All right." He does that speech about the dragon coming like this many pounds of meat headed right this way.
Yeah. Horse meat. Yeah, he says.
Yeah, horse meat heading right this way. And then Quinn is like, "I'm coming." And he like rides on horseback as a dragon's chasing.
Yeah, it was a
him.
cool
It's so
moment.
cool.
Very fun sequence.
It's so cool.
yeah, that sequence where I really enjoy the process and the detail to the process of the triangulation and the tactics and everything. And some movies would just glance over that. Yeah, we kill the dragon, we shoot it with a big harpoon or whatever. Like this, you can tell that these people are trained and this is something that they've adapted to survive. And it just brings it kind of down to the ground level and makes it feel more realistic. And it's interesting the reversal where at first the refugees in the castle are wary of these guys because they've seen, people imitate military before that are just really, con artists and stuff. And if you ever saw like the show Jericho, like you see that people are dressed up as military, but they're actually just, scavengers and use that to swindle the people who are sheltered in place. But ironically, they turn out to be the real deal. And whereas Christian Bale's character is, so focused on turtling and shelter in place, and we actually get the real military, which you would think would be a good thing, but he gets actually drawn into involvement in the rest of his world in action. And so it brings all that process where you have the conflicting ideologies, and you can see the backgrounds in the process and the efforts that both sides have made to make their own status quo. And the conflict of that, it's not only a conflict of two guys with egos, it's a conflict of the methods of survival. And I don't know, it just feels bigger and larger because they pay attention to the details and the methodology of what these individual groups have done to get where they're at now.
Right.
What is smart filmmaking too about the movie is they show the benefits and consequences of both of those lines of life, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas the sheltered ones, you have a limited amount of resources. If anything were to happen to any of it, it's like game over.
Yeah.
And in the case of Van Zandt, just stabbing out there alone, you're always going to be vulnerable to some sort of attack but there's results to both as well. Like the survivors, it's a large encampment. They've managed to make it this far, as has Van Zandt. So,
I think one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know if we're at this part, but it's just more about Van Zandt, though, is when they are kind of slugging it out and they're talking about it's basically their difference of opinion on how to handle this situation. But Quinn is basically arguing that I'm keeping them alive, and Van Zandt straight up says, no, you're just killing them slowly. It's just such a cool moment of seeing their difference of opinion where their hearts are both in the right place. But I like how this incorporation of Van Zandt kind of helps Quinn's character realize that, what we're doing is fine, but we can't live like this.
Yeah.
There needs to be some kind of sacrifice and action involved.
Yeah. But we do end up seeing the consequence of Van Zandt's actions in the caravan fire where most of his people are killed, and he kind of retreats back.
Well, his is almost too rash of an approach. Like he wants to go in swinging, but that costs lives, unnecessary lives.
It's the turtle in the hair.
Yeah. Also, I just got to call out these effects again, especially with that the caravan sequence.
That's my favorite sequence in this movie.
And this was one the Corridor crew broke down and figured out pretty well, but they actually had a what is that construction
a miniature
vehicle called?
set, and they had a crane holding a flamethrower.
Yeah, and then they superimposed the CGI dragon on top of the flamethrower that was, blasting the miniature vehicles. And it just looks so good.
And it wasn't even that small of a miniature, if I remember correctly. Like, it's a quarter size or something like that, where it's like, if you looked at a vehicle, imagine the size of your couch, which is still like, it's big, but think about how much you would have to do to rebuild an entire set like that size.
Right.
So it's really cool the way they did that. And that's why the fire looks so realistic in this, because it was real.
Yeah. When David and I were watching this, he that scene came up and he said, "Oh, this was on Corridor Crew." And so he watched it and he's just going, "Wow." And then he's like, "We need to watch that again." And he
I rewound
and then
it.
he plays it again. He's just like, "Wow." And he paused it too at one of the points where he was explaining the flamethrower was effect, and he just sat there and he was looking at it for a while.
I was in
that
awe.
just looks so cool.
And guys, that is 2002.
I know.
Blows my freaking mind. I paused it a couple times actually, because the dragon itself, which we've talked a little bit about how good it is, but I would say this is one of the top 3 dragons I've seen in a movie. Like this
What are
is
the other
up
Game
there.
of Thrones, Smaug, and this one.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah, those are the
yeah.
3 notable dragons.
And I would say this one is almost more realistic than Smaug. Like I say, this one is in the way they use their lighting. It's the way they used it.
Well, Smaug was almost supposed to be more of a caricature, not
Yeah.
really.
And it was
a
good. It was
creature-
amazing.
Creature.
Well, it depends on what kind of dragon you're going for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Like the dragons in Reign of Fire, you can see existing in real life a lot more easily than Smaug.
yeah.
But as far as the mythological depiction of dragons, Smaug is just as realistic.
It is
as,
in its
Reign of
world.
Fire.
Especially when they go into details of the anatomy and the physiology of,
Yeah.
you know, how the spawn and the eggs and the fertilization of the eggs and then the mixture of the chemicals that creates the flame and all that stuff. Like they don't shy away
Yeah.
from details in this movie. I mean,
That was
they-
great.
Yeah.
You can see fire extinguishers staged in this in like encampment that they use later
Yeah.
on in the movie. Like early on, there's a fire extinguisher on the wall. Later on, they actually use that fire extinguisher that was there that whole time.
Yeah,
And that's-
everything's paid off.
Yeah, there's so many details here that it's well balanced. You don't
Gosh.
necessarily pick them out, but it really fleshes out the whole world and the story.
Yeah,
And I think that's why it's so
Go ahead.
why it's so believable is and there are so many movies that use this where they have so many details that they know the audience isn't really going to see upon first watching it, but little do we know that's what adds to the believability of a scene. We're not looking for it, but somewhere just our mind is focused on the fact that there are people playing out a scenario, but so much credit should go to the teams that work on environments and just all
Lighting,
the little
yeah.
details and everything, because it really does sell this location.
And then you
So-
layer that with the figurative, like Christian Bale's character riding the horse into battle versus the
Yeah.
high speed, low drag, the motorcycles and the military craft.
Yeah.
That it's like those dichotomies on top of all the details. It just, I don't know. It's multidimensional.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things with the director that I don't know anything about the director and his
Rob Bowman?
Yeah, I don't know anything about him and his connection to the what's that department? The ones that do the CGI.
VFX, visual effects?
Visual effects team. Thank you. But the point is, I feel like a lot of directors are like, give me that money shot. Give me that shot that shows me the dragon. We're gonna hold it there. You're gonna see it up and close, and we're gonna really bask in how good we did in this. Get some sort of award for it. And this one, I feel like it was very realistic. It's like, we're not gonna hold it on this dragon up close. We can't do this in 2002.
They do have one good money shot at the end.
and I think they picked their timing.
Yeah,
I think that's what
exactly. It was perfect.
And imagine if you were actually in this kind of scenario, if you had some sort of like handheld camera, it's not going to be easy for you to get a shot of a dragon, It's moving, it's constantly flying, and it's constantly backlit in this movie. So you can't see a lot of the detail. And I think that was such a smart choice where I feel like any other director may have tried to bite off more than they can chew. Try to show more than their effects could handle.
Yeah.
So I just another shout out to the VFX team.
All right. Y'all ready to move on?
Yeah, dog.
In open defiance, Van Zandt orders his soldiers to enlist the castle's best men despite Quinn's argument that if they find the male, it will kill them and put the inhabitants of the castle at risk. Quinn attacks Van Zandt in front of the castle's inhabitants, but Van Zandt gives Quinn a beating before the crowd pulls Van Zandt off. Van Zandt and some of the castle's men then depart, but true to Quinn's warnings, their caravan is attacked by the dragon in the ruins of a town 66 miles from London. The dragon then finds the castle and kills most of the inhabitants. Quinn gets the survivors to a bunker, but they are trapped when the dragon returns. During its final attack, Creedy is killed. Van Zandt and Jensen return and free everyone trapped in the bunker. Quinn decides to help Van Zandt and Alex hunt down the male dragon. They fly to London and find hundreds of small dragons, one of which is cannibalized by the larger male. Van Zandt plans to shoot explosives down the dragon's throat with a crossbow. He fires, but the dragon destroys the arrow and eats Van Zandt. Quinn and Alex lure the dragon to ground level, where Quinn fires another explosive into the dragon's mouth, killing it. Later, Quinn and Alex erect a radio tower on a hill overlooking the North Sea. There has been no dragon sighting for over 3 months. Jared arrives to say they have contacted a group of French survivors who want to speak to their leader. Quinn tells Jared he is now their leader and dedicates himself to rebuilding.
We must rebuild.
So I think we skipped a little bit over Alex's introduction, but
we also moved. We also talked about some of the things that hadn't happened yet. But
this is where the movie slightly misses the mark, in my opinion. But I appreciate the balance they're trying to strike with Alex's character being a potential love interest for Quinn, and simultaneously being an apologist for Van Zandt and his kind of madness, so to speak.
Right.
She alludes to it a little bit. I feel like she could have gone a little bit more in depth of, he's a troubled soul or a tortured soul, and this is all the, scary stuff he's seen. That's why he's like this. She mentions it a little bit. It's a little too subtle for my taste, but I get that they didn't go
totally right.
super sappy love story too. I mean, I appreciate that.
The thing is, they just shouldn't have even had any romance involved. But yeah, it is the teasing of this chemistry between them isn't enough, and you don't even really get a sense of Alex's personality and like why they're clicking.
Yeah.
But
they survived a dragon fight.
Yeah. But so they don't layer it on heavily, so it didn't really bother me.
Yeah, I wasn't upset by it, but nor will I defend it. Although I can't explain it. It kind of makes sense that, these two people just have a chemistry when they see each other. That's kind of, it's post-apocalyptic. It's like, oh, suitable male, suitable
Take
female.
what you can get.
Hey,
I took it as
this guy's not insane, so
yeah, I took it as she's hardened by the military lifestyle, and she's still intelligent and strong-willed and does her job and her duty, but she also recognizes the kind heart she sees in Quinn, and so she's striking that balance. And I would rather them err on the side of this side where there's no sappy love story and less connection than there should be, versus the overly obvious, male and female get together, bada bing, bada boom love story.
Yeah,
I agree.
I appreciate this take versus the other.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Anyway, Noah, I'm going to push back against what you said about there only being one money shot in this movie. I think there are multiple ones.
Well, there are a couple, but there's one real money
I know
shot,
exactly
like
which one
David
he's
was
talking
saying.
about. I think when I see money shot is where you linger on a very close-up
Yeah.
shot of something.
Yeah. But I'm going to say the scene where the siege on the castle of the dragon flapping its wings and blowing fire into their castle is just like an iconic like fantasy. A dragon blowing fire on a castle is just like, that's something they were like, we have to have this.
That was amazing. I want to touch on what David and I are talking about real quick.
No, okay.
Because you did.
But we might
hit
as
that
well
part.
lead up to it, right?
Well, I mean, I suppose so.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
All right.
We'll get to your money shot.
Sure.
What did y'all think about the... I thought this was kind of weird. Why is there only one male dragon? Why?
Because fish and fertilization or something.
Okay.
AJ, help us.
It just seems like it's not a really sustainable race if there's only ever one male.
Well, I kind of think of it as like in nature there is a sort of checks and balances type system. So because these are such massive creatures, it would make sense why there would only be one male. And I kind of got the impression that they're sort of hermaphroditic, So like if there's only one, then they have the ability, sort of like Jurassic Park, to create another sexual organ to produce more,
Life,
I guess. So it's
finds a
like
way.
there's definitely a reptile amphibian blend here.
Yeah.
So
I just didn't think it made a lot
Well,
of
there's precedent
sense.
in the animal kingdom. I mean, you have lions, you have the male lion and multiple lionesses in a pride. You have, roosters and hens. I mean, the alpha male that's, for oversimplifying it, I mean, there's precedent in the animal kingdom for, especially this method of reproduction that they go over.
yeah.
So,
I didn't think it was that weird.
Yeah, and it still helps to set a scale of this is the final test and that kind of thing. And so I guess it's a little bit of suspension of disbelief, and it also is in contrast to every other dragon we've seen, and every other media is dragons everywhere and reproducing. This is kind of that. It's a different social order.
So I'm with AJ on this one, but I can also say that they never specifically said there was no chance of there being more than one. It's more hypothesized
I
that
guess
there's just the one.
I guess there's more of a selling point for your sequel if it's like oh, it wasn't the only male.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
There's
actually,
another one.
the cool thing is that you can have these questions because this is a very new problem for them. And I like that these characters don't really have all the answers. So they're kind of just speculating that there is one male, but who knows? There could be more. It's just that's what's on their plate at the moment.
Yeah, it could be like bees or ants where, you have the queen figure and,
Right.
Potential queens are born and reproduce, but they're killed or, pushed out while the living queen is there. But if there's a transition event, then it's a potential sequel or whatever. So
Right.
Yeah.
The bees make more sense to me because they can be multiple queens. There can be more male dragons.
Yeah. Anyway, around this point in the movie, which I know this is like the whole half of the movie that I just read, but I just started thinking to myself, wow, this movie actually exists. It's a post-apocalyptic dragon movie with A-list actors who are taking it incredibly seriously with their performances. And I'm like, that's just, you don't see that.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Creedy's death was impactful.
Butler,
His character, it wasn't in the spotlight, especially for, as big a name as he is now. But his relationship with Quinn and the whole survivor colony as a whole, that, I felt their loss. And then him trying to hold it together while all the children are in terror, and he's trying to calm them down, and he can't hold himself together from
That part
tears and all
got
that
me.
stuff.
That was an amazing scene.
The thing though is you don't see performances like this in movies like this.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it doesn't exist. You look at any monster movies today,
Game of Thrones.
you're going to see a bunch of actors, even if they're A-listers, they're just cashing a check.
Yeah.
And maybe they're cashing a check here, but they're also like, no, I'm going to give it 100%.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of refreshing to see actors of this caliber take
Yeah.
on a genre picture like this with such, professionalism, I guess.
This
Yeah.
is one of those movies where if it came out today, I bet it would get a lot better reviews than it got back then.
I would hope so. I think there's an appreciation for it today that there wasn't before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Quinn, after all their men are pretty much killed, the castle has been burned and the caravan was burned. All that happened. Quinn and Van Zandt finally kind of see eye to eye, and that's somewhat thanks to Alex, I guess, or ish. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you talking about whenever he comes back after the caravan's been burned, or?
Yeah. Okay. So they both Van Zandt. This is good character development here. It shows that Van Zandt has grown and Quinn has also grown, and they've learned from each other. And Van Zandt turns that line that he originally said around and says, "You lead, I'll follow." And they set out to kill the male dragon. And the development of Quinn is that he's now ready to confront that dragon, something that he associates immense trauma with. So it's kind of, this is something I didn't get as a kid when I watched this movie. I just found it boring, but watching it today, I was like, no, this is an interesting development. I like this team
Van
up now.
Zandt's
It's
been
like,
humbled, and
yeah, it's
and Quinn realizes he
can't just
he-
stay
he
there
can't
all
just
his
do
life.
nothing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
they've both seen the consequences of their actions, and they realize like, oh, we got to go for the heart, and each of us has the means
Yeah.
to do that together.
Well, I think
Almost-
a lot. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think it's almost a trifold for Quinn because first there's the Alex component where she's not been working on him, but sort of helping him realize that he needs to change something about his approach. And then there's also the death of Creedy, which I think puts a little more fire into his desire to rhymes, into finishing this. And then on top of that, he's the only one with knowledge of where this big dragon originated. So it's almost like he feels that weight of responsibility of, I'm the only one that can really lead them. So it's my job to see this through. So
Yeah.
I think it all kind of finally pushes him out of his safe zone.
Yeah, it's surprisingly smart. Like for a B movie like this,
Yeah.
it's I appreciate that. So what'd y'all think of when they come upon London and it's just this swarm of small dragons and the big dragon comes out?
I love that image.
Oh shit.
And the incorporation of cannibalization was actually very clever because I was thinking at this point, like, don't they run out of food? Like, how do all these dragons sustain themselves? And then almost immediately, the one big one ate like one of the females. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but is it implied that they like feed on ash early on in the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't understand that, but
I think
multiple times.
It's
base sustenance.
Yeah.
Like you get the impression that both species are struggling to survive at this point. It's just kind of a outlive the other kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I interpreted it slightly differently. I interpreted that as a more symbolic statement, like they feed on ash, or in other words, the suffering of humanity.
Yeah. I think they actually
I get
do,
that.
though.
I
can see how
know.
it's
I
both.
just interpreted the statement to mean
Right.
that, and maybe they meant both ways.
And maybe more ash specifically that's from organic compound, like the burning of the plants that they're trying to grow their own farm, or burning of other organic matter or living creatures, organisms, that kind of thing. Whereas if you turn stone into ash, they probably can't sustain that, but the burnt organic matter they can. So I think when that's dwindling, they're also dwindling, or kind of scavenging.
Yeah. Also, something I noticed, or actually I read this, and I thought it was really smart that they did. This isn't related to what you just said, but most of all the weapons that people have in this movie are close range, and that was an intentional choice to bring the danger directly to them, whereas
Interesting.
a further ranged attack would diminish the danger of having a dragon nearby.
Yeah.
So that's why you have Quinn wielding an axe and these, water. Okay, I can't think of words right now.
Hoses?
Hoses, yes, thank you. It's these hoses that don't actually shoot that far. I just thought that was another interesting choice.
It shows that, again, that necessity is the mother of invention. These people are using what the human spirit needs to do to survive with the materials they have available. And then that's why at the end it's really kind of fitting that they destroy the dragon with crossbows, something that's somewhat primitive relative to the attack helicopter and all that stuff.
Yeah, you have to get up close to do the deed.
Yeah, it's a domination of the pure will of the species.
Yeah. So, in a last-ditch effort, Van Zandt tries to take out the dragon with his axe after failing to land the crossbow shot. What a way to go!
I know.
Yep, that is.
That was.
What's that guy from
that's a
Guardians
death.
of the Galaxy? The what's his name plays? Dave
Drax?
Bautista? Yeah, Drax. I imagine him with his two knives, just like
yeah.
jumping into a beast's mouth or whatever.
was,
That's kind of what Van Zandt went for.
It's the type of end that you knew was coming for a character like this
Right.
from the start, and it just totally made sense.
He wanted to die.
Like, it wasn't that he wanted to die; it's that he was willing to die
Yeah.
for the cause. Like, he didn't care. His life was not part of the equation.
Yeah.
And that's just a
He's a Viking and he died with honor.
put a nice little button on his character arc there.
Yeah.
Valhalla.
I think
awaits.
part of the reason I like that is you could feel kind of his life expectancy, like just kind of over his head somewhere. You don't know when he's going to die, but you knew he would.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about that scene is it's just sometimes I hate unceremonious deaths, but in this case, it just kind of made sense because that's the way he was fighting from the beginning. It's just that was one too many, and that's the time that he got snagged. But
The only thing I would have changed. Sorry, did I?
no, go ahead.
The only thing I would have changed is I wanted him to at least like land that axe blow, like
Yeah.
in its head or something.
I
Like
know.
so, then later on
Did
you see like an
something.
axe in its head or something.
Yeah.
It literally showed that he did nothing almost. Like he just died.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
well,
crap.
I think sorry.
So regarding that, I was just thinking that, and then I thought after that, wait, no, because this is a story about Quinn and overcoming his trauma. He needs to be the one that defeats this guy.
The thing is, I didn't want the dragon to be defeated. I just wanted Van Zandt to have a noticeable blow.
Well,
in
yeah,
the
but
dragon.
Van Zandt's killed like 200 or whatever,
Yeah,
50.
I just-
I don't know. It would have made his death slightly more impactful if he did
I know.
something other than just jump into the mouth of a dragon.
I get that, but I like that it was pretty much 100% Quinn that took down the male
Right.
dragon.
And
As
it
much as I
wasn't
love
just
Van
Quinn,
Zandt,
though. It was a team effort.
Okay, it was 100% his shot. Like his shot was the one that did it.
I don't know, man. Matthew McConaughey taking a cannonball into the mouth of a dragon, like it's just that was also one of the only issues I had with this movie is that it was very quick. And I was like, he's a badass character. Like at least like show it like grazing his face or something, like anything. But it kind of looked like he just was just going for a swim in a mouth and he was gone. Like that was it.
Swan
Well,
dive.
it harkens back to the fragility of their situation, the fragileness of the tenuousness of their survival. Like as dominant of a force as you can be, like that's how much terror they're living in. So
Yeah.
I kind of appreciate the quickness of it, that it was just, kind of a snap and he's gone, versus him, having some struggle and drawn out breath and last words and kind of stuff. I feel like
Yeah.
that would have
Because
stretched
that's
things
always
too long.
overdone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not even his style anyway.
No, he's the kamikaze pilot.
He would have
Yeah.
just like flipped off the camera and died.
Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, just his fight with Quinn early on. I mean, he throws headbutts, and I mean, this is honestly one of McConaughey's best performances, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like he's
I
completely
am with
into
you.
this character. Absolutely.
If I didn't know it was him, I would not have guessed immediately. It would
I
have taken me
actually-
a second.
I actually heard that on set he was telling people to call him Van Zandt
Yeah.
just,
Yeah,
this-
while he was walking around
is
because he
one of
really
the-
wanted to get into it.
Yeah, this is an often forgotten method performance, weirdly.
Dude.
Yeah.
It's
Call
I'm
me
with
Blade.
I'm with AJ.
That's funny. That was that too. You're
Yeah,
right.
at least he wasn't leaving post-it
I honestly
notes,
think
I
that's a
guess.
common thing for actors, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's probably taken out of context for however you want to spin an actor and whatever light
Right.
you want to shine them in. I think that happens a lot on set. Is they're trying to do a professional thing to do their job. If that helps them get into the role,
Yeah.
get into the zone, then go for it.
Yeah.
You know
I mean,
what?
we've
is
even
also-
seen things with what's his name, Christian Bale. I mean, there's been some negative recordings of him on set that are
Terminator Salvation.
that it sounds bad, and not to make light of it, but there's also context that is somewhat important. So
Yeah.
I don't know the life of a Hollywood actor. I mean that's completely foreign to me, but I'm not going to get too involved and make any kind of opinions on that. But I think that these actors are really getting into these characters, and it shows on screen. And if we get a good result from that, then I think that that's the job that they're trying to be professional for, and I can
Right.
kind of give them the benefit of that doubt.
Definitely.
So I went on a weird tangent with that, so I apologize.
No, I agree. Matthew McConaughey
No.
is not in this movie. It is
Yeah.
only Van Zandt.
Well, I think like when I heard that he was asking people to call him that, it wasn't expressed in a negative light, at least from what I read. People were expressing, this was how into this role
Yeah.
he was.
To state another similarity to Blade, Van Zandt has a line. Use it.
Yeah.
Use
I know.
it.
That
Yeah,
was
but he
so
only
surprising.
does it once.
I was surprised.
Only once, and
Only
it's
once,
perfect.
and
I
it
was
works.
surprised to hear that in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Oh, but I guess that brings us to a money shot.
Yes, let's talk.
Yes,
let's
talk
talk
about
it.
That
the money
really
shot.
cool moment where they get right
Set it up,
into
though. Set up the.
his domain.
Like, tell
Set
me
up
what's
the moment.
happening in the scene, Noah. Set it
Well,
up.
this is
Story time.
This is them. They're finally encroaching in his lair. They've gone through the little tunnel area. They've come out. He flies over, and everything's all tense. Everyone does their thing, and now the dragon's landed. There he is in this beautiful. Just the CG is really well done, and
Yeah. It's
a
one of those
beautiful
cases
dragon.
where in our next movie it's less successful. Not to spoil anything, but you notice that it's CGI.
Yeah.
But it is so well integrated that it does not mess with how involved you are with the scene. Like it didn't bother me at all. Like,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
still holds up.
Yeah, and especially for its time.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, it's not bad. It's not.
No,
even close
it's
to
not bad now, but it was especially good
I
for 2002.
I kind of wish I would have saw it back then. It would have really made an impact on me.
No, and that's the most important thing is what Reese said is it's incorporated. It doesn't stand out.
Yeah.
And I wanna throw some shade at Rotten Tomatoes really quick.
Oh yeah, please do.
You know how they have a blurb of like the critical consensus?
Yeah.
Trying my best not to look at Reese's laptop right
No,
now.
this has been disproven throughout the years because this movie was nominated for awards for its effect.
Good.
But here was the consensus. Rain of Fire gains some altitude with its pyrotechnic action and a smolderingly campy Matthew McConaughey. But the feature's wings are clipped by a derivative script and emphasis on this visual effects that fizzle out.
What?
Oh,
So it is
okay.
literally criticizing, in my opinion, amazing visual effects. Like one of this movie's main saving graces.
But also the script is good.
Yeah. It's a bad take.
Was that
I
Roger
think.
Ebert?
No,
Or
that
was
was
it
the
someone else?
it was the
Roger
overall-
Ebert actually was positive about this one, I think.
No, this was the overall critical consensus of Rotten Tomatoes. They usually write a quick blurb about just encompassing all the reviews.
Got it.
Yeah, I had actually accidentally checked out some of the reviews for this just
accidentally.
well, it was an accident. I was looking into the movie and trying to read some of the summaries for it, and I happened to see Roger Ebert's review, and he actually was complimenting the effects.
Yeah, good.
So
He should. But yeah, the final moment where Quinn shoots the arrow into the dragon's throat is so cool. You get
Yeah.
the effects work is so neat because you can tell it's lodged in the middle of its throat somewhere. It blows up and just falls down. And then this is something I haven't complimented the movie for just yet, but anytime there's a dead dragon, it switches to practical effects. They
I noticed that.
Yeah, they built an actual dragon. Earlier, it's Matthew McConaughey finding an egg within one of the dead dragons.
No, that was Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, sorry. And now it's this one. There's a practical dragon dead.
They also showed it when Matthew McConaughey was walking over the one he killed.
Yeah, the throat's exploded. There's fire everywhere. It's just very very visceral and
to comment on that, the one where Christian Bale pulls out the egg, one of the things you notice is that one of the dragon's limbs is,
ripped
from
the fall.
From the
There's
from
actually
the
its
fall.
wing.
But that's
Attention
just such
to
a
detail.
it's such an attention to detail.
You could tell there were people researching like what would a dragon infested world be like? How would people evolve to survive dragon attacks? Like what tools would they implement with vehicles and weapons, and this one realizes all of that, and it doesn't like shove it in your face, but it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, So the closing moment of this movie, Quinn and Alex erect a radio tower, and there's communication in French or something like that, and it's kind of he's got the axe. Quinn has the axe, and he passes it on to Jared, implying like
Leadership
hey, you
change.
You take on the mantle. It's your turn now. Blah 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 blah. And you'll be the hero of the sequel. No, I don't know. Who knows? But how'd y'all think the movie wrapped up? Satisfied?
Oh,
I was pretty satisfied.
yeah, and it's really like the whole arc of this movie is very symmetrical. The exodus from London and the re-entry into London. I think the last track of the soundtrack, which is really supportive of the emotion of this movie, is called Rebirth, and it's just I don't know, it feels right, and it feels like it's wrapped up within its own story arc.
This is one of those times where I just now started paying attention to the soundtrack. There are certain movies where the score almost dominates and kind of leads the movie, which I feel like I might bring up again in an upcoming episode. But in this one, I almost forgot about the music because I was just so invested in the story and what was happening. And then just at the end, it's like, oh wait, there's music in this.
That was me as well.
It's
so
well
the score
balanced.
was by 3 people. Edward Shearmer, Brad Wagner, or Wagner. I don't know which one it is.
Wagner.
And Mad at Gravity, which I don't know what that is either. But my feelings on the score, There's no noticeable theme, but the score supported the visceral action in just the right way, where it was like it just enhanced what was happening on the screen. Mm-hmm. It wasn't there to be like, oh, that's a catchy melody.
Yeah,
it was more just like
It's complimentary.
the score is. Yeah, the score is part of the noise, I guess.
And here is your complimentary movie score.
Yeah.
So I was happy that it had a happy ending, but it was almost too much with like the hand holding at the end and
It's like walk off into the sunset.
distance.
Yeah.
I would have been happier if they had just ended it with, them beating the dragon and kind of just like, we did that.
I'll
We
say,
see
like,
daylight for the first time in the movie, essentially. Just not
Yeah,
shrouded in
yeah.
mist or ash.
Yeah,
That's true. That's actually is important.
the ending is one scene where a nice little score flourish would have helped with an emotional impact.
Yeah.
You can't really do that when you have a very percussive score that is mainly meant for, but yeah, I was still okay with it. I didn't really feel anything in that final scene.
That's where I'm at too. I wasn't hurt by it. I didn't love it either. Although I was happy that it ended on a happy note.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get to our
That's fine.
reviews, and then we're going to talk about this franchise. Welcome back. David, you have our reviews in a bowl there. You want to pull them out?
No.
All right.
All right. Let's see who goes first. Oh, of course, it's me. So I'm going to start us off with I wrote down an 8 and bump it up to an 8.5.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm going hard on this one.
I'm going
Hey, maybe not that hard, okay?
Yeah, I don't know. There
I
are
see
words,
you.
terminology. I could have chosen all sorts of things, but that's what I landed on.
Surprised you're this high on this one. I'm impressed.
All right, so it was surprising because I'd never heard of this movie really. I've never seen it, and what really got me was when I was watching it, I ended up sitting up. Like I remember kind of leaning back in my chair. I'm like, oh wait, no, I'm gonna sit up and watch this movie. Like I'm engaged.
I gotta-
You know what? You were also like that for Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that was when I
exactly how
remember
it was.
you were really reclined. You weren't super jazzed on the Mummy franchise, but then those Yetis,
Yeah,
they punted
popped
that
up.
football.
Yeah.
And then David adjusted his pants, sat up in his chair, and like, this is it. This is
You know
my
what,
On the
movie.
edge of my
funny?
seat now.
I don't know if this speaks for David too much, but I was looking at his desktop background, his phone background. And most of the time, you'd see, like a picture of your girlfriend, your
other,
significant other, but it was a Yeti,
It was.
and it was playing football.
No, actually, it was
Playing
it was the wife in the movie that I don't even remember what her name is anymore.
Mariah Bello.
Why do you remember that?
That's the actress.
No, I know
her
that you
name is
remember
Evie.
that. Yeah, I know, but it wasn't the original actress.
What did you give that movie, David?
I don't know.
7.
I give it
Seven.
a 7.
Moving back to your Rain of Fire review.
You get 30 seconds. I'm going to start
Continue.
timing you guys on this.
You should.
So I'm going with an 8.5 on this one. There are so many things I could say. I think in the end, it's so fast paced that you cannot be bored watching this movie. The acting is perfect. Matthew McConaughey gets lost in his role, and I am 100% on board. And the dragon CGI is phenomenal. Like this, I mean, it holds up. It holds up to 2020. And I'm sure there are going to be people who, disagree with me on this and might go back and rewatch and be like, oh, that's not how I think dragon CGI should look.
You see that little pixel right there? That's not realistic.
Exactly. It's the CGI is based in its time period, and they knew exactly what they were supposed to do. And a lot of it is based in lighting and making sure that you match it with your scenery and not trying to draw out long close-ups. They knew exactly what they were doing, and it worked. And I was so invested in it. I don't know. The ending could have been a little bit better, but 8.5, I think it's so good that it can't get much better than that for this. I think that there could have been some more character development, and the intro I think was slightly weak, but the entire middle part of the movie, I mean, was almost perfect.
Yeah, I would say
fault
that
it.
I'd agree. The way the dragon is discovered and released is the worst part of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so the middle portion is definitely driving this movie, and I loved all the actors and actresses involved. Yeah. So next up, Reese with a 7.
I am also, this is why we're allowed to change these.
Yeah, our new rules.
After discussion, it's like I've thought about it, and that 7 was primarily based on me not thinking that Christian Bale's character was well developed enough, and I honestly came away from this discussion a little more enlightened to his character. So I'm going to bump it up at least 0.5. So 7.5 for Reign of Fire. I still don't think there's an incredible amount of substance in this movie. It is a balls-to-the-wall action movie with dragons in a post-apocalyptic setting. I think the movie could have benefited from maybe 15 to 20 minutes more before, the action really starts happening, where we could really establish, the life of these people on this castle. I think Matthew McConaughey or Van Zandt shows up on the scene a little too soon. Like, I wanted to kind of get comfortable with these characters, understand their lifestyle a little bit more, and then like it's disrupted at a time when you're not really expecting it. Because on the flip side of that, though, this movie is only 100 minutes long. It's constantly throwing things at you, and it doesn't feel as rushed as it sounds like I'm saying. I feel like things happen at a natural pace, even though I could have used more establishing in the beginning. And then Matthew McConaughey is just, he's a sight to behold in this movie. Just watching him give 110% to this character, Van Zandt, is like, that's the selling point of the movie almost, just as much as seeing these incredibly well realized dragons. And I think the main appeal of this movie, the dragons and the Van Zandt versus Quinn, the dichotomy between them and how they ultimately come together to face this threat. It's just, I found it to be pretty compelling, and that was enhanced even more after we talked about it. So yeah, Reign of Fire, this is an underrated gem. I do not think this movie deserved the mixed reviews, spoilers, that it got, nor the... No, I will not go into box office right now. I just think this is kind of an underlooked movie, and I'm glad that it is kind of in a cult status now, because it deserves it. It's an entertaining action movie that gets the job done in spades. So yeah, 7.5.
All right, next up we have Noah with a smoldering 8.5.
Yeah, baby. I really like this movie. I don't know. I almost want to put it a little higher.
Dang, a 9.
But I'll leave it at 8.5 because my hype might be, more powerful than my logical judgment.
Go with what your heart says.
I think that this movie portrayed dragons in a perfect way. I think there isn't a problem with character development. In fact, for the type of movie this is, I think they did a phenomenal job with even developing characters at all. You dock the 1.5 points for the kind of weird romance thing, and the which, by the way, isn't bad in and of itself, but it's
unneeded.
It's kind of unnecessary. She didn't really have a huge role in the first place. But that said, I think this movie it's fast paced, which makes sense because dragons and post-apocalypse, you mix that together, you kind of get into a bunch of life-threatening situations. I'll agree. You could maybe have 10 more minutes or so of character development at the beginning, even though I don't think they need more character development. It's just kind of nice to see that
just live in the world a little longer. Yeah,
like a little more living. Like the character development's fine, but just to let you get more attached to the settlement. It might have had more of an effect later on. But other than that, I think this is an amazing movie, and they really did Dragons justice. And
Critics, y'all dropped the ball on this one.
The acting is great.
Yeah.
Save it, Reese. Jeez.
Yeah. Sorry.
Like Matthew McConaughey, he's insane. And so is Christian Bale in a subtle way. Not sudden. Wow.
All of a
In a
sudden,
sudden
Christian
way.
Bale.
Suddenly
I'm just
he was.
excited. I'll keep with 8.5.
All right. Next up, AJ with a 9.
Nice.
Ooh, there you go.
Tell it how it is.
So the criticisms that have been levied against this here, I actually have no issues with the pace at all. I think it's very natural. I don't find it fast or slow. I can agree that the intro probably could have... The main criticism I have, if anything, with this movie is the lack of contrast tonally. We could use a little bit more levity, and I think having something establishing in the beginning what the old normal was, happy normal society before collapse, would really kind of push the banality of everything we see here in the survival, the struggle, really kind of push that home in the darkness and the drear. Like, it's a little overbearing, and by no means is this movie... So there are some movies out there that are just emotionally oppressive, even though they are very good movies thematically. Like, you don't really want to watch it again because it's a downer. It brings you down. This movie is not that, but it is slightly monotonous.
Yeah.
But I love the detail of this movie. I mean, the set design, the characters, everything that's fleshed out in the world that's established. I get enough character development where I'm on board. And like I said, I don't really have an issue with the plot. And what I love about this movie is bringing the fantastic aspect of dragons and bringing it into the mundane in every aspect of the world, where this is a struggle of wills of creatures and their desire to propagate and survive. And then we have within the species, within humanity, the different methodologies of survival. Yeah. And I just enjoyed the action, the performances of Bale and especially McConaughey here. Really, the thing that keeps this movie from being perfect is that lack of tonal contrast or range, which we could use a bit more levity. I'm not asking for comedy, but maybe a touch more of a maybe more nuanced romance between Alex and Quinn would have been appreciated. Her emotional struggles with defending Van Zandt or something like that. And I appreciate that they're trying to be restrained in her character and what they were doing. And I think they were probably trying to play it safe with her. But I feel like she could have been the elevating factor to really highlight the emotional peaks in both Quinn and Van Zandt and, humanity as a whole. And she could be a kind of a neutral surrogate for between those two opposing forces. This movie was criminally underrated, and I don't really understand people writing it off as silly or derivative. Like, this is a novel take on dragons, especially within a society that's crumbling. And every moment of this movie there's something to look at, and it's visually beautiful. Especially in what's right in front of you and in the background, the details. And I'm a sucker for details, and that's why I really am drawn to this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, perhaps the standards were pretty high at the time with Lord of the Rings just coming out and all that. So maybe people were coming off the tails of that and
one fantasy allowed. No more.
All right, last one.
Next, last but not least, Irina with an 8.
I think I'll have to put that up to an 8.5.
And we're all moving ours up.
Yeah, I think it's just that, talking about it kind of brings it all back into perspective, and I kind of hastily jotted down an 8. But I think a lot of what I was going to say is basically what AJ just stated, and particularly the levity portion, where I think the pacing of this movie is just fine. The intro has it's a little too rapid for me, and the finale is maybe a little too sappy, but still fine. Like, I don't really have much of an issue with this movie other than the fact that I wish it were a little longer, and that there were moments between certain characters that I wish I could have seen. For instance, maybe a little more between Creedy and Quinn, where Creedy is kind of, throwing quips here and there, where I still enjoy his character, but I would have liked to see more of who he was as a person.
Creedy wasn't quite as developed as I would have liked.
Or his adopted son, Quinn's adopted son.
Yeah,
you have
forget
little
about him a little
you
bit.
have little moments with him, and
Yeah.
I do love the that moment where the son wants to join basically the U.S. forces, and then decides against it and reunites with his father and quote unquote father. And I think there are just little moments that you kind of get a small taste, but I would have liked a moment of kind of respite from everything that's going on, where you just before the climax, everyone is at, the happiest they've been for some time.
Yeah.
And you're just sharing that emotion with them before everything's about to go down the crapshoot and some of you are going to die,
Or a little calm before the storm.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll stick with an 8.5, and for the most part, this is still a golden movie in my memory.
Nice. All right, AJ, what's our overall score, and how does this factor in?
So we have a group average of 8.4.
Nice. I never thought a Rain of Fire would do that well on our show. I'm so
Yeah.
happy.
Isn't that
I'm happy
weird?
though. I'm
Yeah,
happy.
yeah.
That is below Tropic Thunder at an 8.6 and above Interview with the Vampire at 8.2.
Wow, it beat Interview with the
Interesting.
Vampire.
That's surprising.
That is surprising. I don't know if I agree with it being above Interview with the Vampire, but
I think it's in the ballpark. I think it's in the right
think
ballpark.
they are close enough in my mind.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's go to critics on Rotten Tomatoes. This is where
Can we just skip this? They don't matter.
Yeah, this is where stuff it gets.
The people need to know.
Yeah, it's a bit of a downer here. Rotten Tomatoes 42% with an audience score. This is also surprising. 49%.
Criminal.
Yeah. Metacritic, this movie had a 39, which is deemed kind of on the negative side. With
Really?
an audience score of 6.1, which is technically slightly positive. Also, IMDb following suit with a 6.2. That's an audience-based score, which I guess is technically positive, but
I thought
seems...
IMDb was going to come in hotter than that because,
Yeah.
like you said, IMDb is usually higher than most.
Yeah, that said,
Right.
what should be noted is that this movie does have a strong following, and a cult following at that. I mean, Quarter Crew wouldn't have covered this movie if it didn't have some sort of following. So yeah, it has its fans, which, I'll take that. I'll take it. That's fine. So yeah, mixed reviews overall for Reign of Fire. At least it wasn't like a complete bomb with critics. 42%, as bad as that sounds on Rotten Tomatoes, that actually means 42% of critics would recommend this movie. So 42% of critics gave it a positive score.
And this was also after this movie, like Rotten Tomatoes came out after this movie existed.
No,
Like, by
it was a retrospective.
while.
They pulled
But
reviews.
still,
from,
58% said they wouldn't recommend it.
yeah, 58. Yeah,
That's sad.
I know it is kind of sad. They did this one dirty. Let's get it on to the box office. This movie released on July 12th, 2002, against Men in Black 2's second weekend and the first weekends of Road to Perdition and Halloween Resurrection. It was budgeted at around $60 million. How do y'all think this movie did at the box office?
1,000.
Again, that's a July 12th release. That's middle of the summer. They were gunning for big bucks on this one. AJ, I'm going to go with you first this time.
So oddly enough, and I don't know if it's a retrospective take on this, I don't remember this being marketed heavily. And I know even this title, like we mentioned in our intro, is all of us have seen this. And I think that's kind of that's not normal. Most people I talk about this movie, maybe if they've heard of it, but if they've heard of it, they haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Which for a summer release is kind of interesting. But for its lack of recognition, at least even in awareness of it, I would say maybe 100,000.
100 million, you mean?
Yeah, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah, 100 million. Noah,
What was the budget again?
60 million.
Dang. AJ had a good guess. Okay. I'll go slightly higher. I'll do 115.
115?
Yeah.
Say it loud for the
$115 million.
All right. Irina.
I don't know. 96.
96? David?
Well, and this is not to box you in, Noah. This is just what I was planning on doing.
But I will box you in.
I'm going to box you in. Yeah. I think I found a new method, by the way, for my scoring.
I don't care. I want to hear what you're
I'm going to go with 120 million.
You're just going to double it each time.
I only double it if it's a movie I think is good, but I know didn't get a sequel.
Well, your boxing in was ineffective this time because Irina
I will
won.
lose. Hey!
Yeah, this movie, 82 million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't do too well, guys.
That's sad.
Yeah, at least it did over its budget, but that's really
Yeah.
doesn't matter at this
Still
point.
sad.
So it released to 16 million opening domestically and made it to 43 million by the time its run was through. And overseas, it did pretty equivalent to its domestic run. So total 82 million, as I said.
right.
What a pity.
Okay.
Yeah, not great. It's definitely a bomb. Again, it's not the bomb where it's like, it's not a notorious bomb where it's, people look back on it
Notorious
as
Bomb.
like,
That's my rapper name.
yeah.
So dumb.
This is a case of the movie's just kind of quietly swept under the rug and write it off. It's fine. There's a lot of red ink there, but it didn't.
No, that's blood.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think this damaged the studio in a serious way. It was more just like, well, I guess that's not really what people or critics were looking for, unfortunately. But again, let's at least be grateful that this does have the cult following. There's people that appreciate this movie even to this day. This is a movie I actually really want to get a 4K release because I want to see how good those dragons look with that enhancement. So this one's a bit of a stretch for our show, being called Franchise Killer. There's not a lot of evidence of any sort of sequel. It's more just kind of hearsay, and basically just going off of how the movie ended, where it's a passing of the torch to the son. They're on to different countries, different lands. What's going on with France? Are there more dragons still back in the United States where Van Zandt came from? Who knows?
Yeah, that was a 98 Godzilla.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a very similar ending to that, except you don't actually see another egg hatch with a dragon in it. But you do get that scene with Quinn holding the egg out. Who knows? There's still a lot of female dragons out there to take care of. Maybe
Aragon.
Yeah. Take that one out. But I could see a sequel being something like, oh, it wasn't the only male dragon. There's another one.
Or a Jurassic Park scenario.
Yeah,
where-
or they dig the depths somewhere else and discover another dragon.
Oh,
like,
no.
You could do anything with this. And you have to imagine that if this were successful, yeah, this is definitely the type of movie that you'd do a sequel for. You don't just make a one-off of this post-apocalyptic dragon premise.
And yet, I would not want it to have another.
I would if the talent was there, you know? Like, I would be down for a sequel to this.
I don't think that they would be able to do it justice. Like,
Talent that's not phoned in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know, you can't recreate Van Zandt because he's dead. And it looks like they're going to continue with the boy, and I don't really care about the boy.
The boys?
Yeah.
So, no, I'm not saying it would be bad, but I feel like it wouldn't live up to this one.
Literally, the only kernel of a sequel that we have was an interview with Christian Bale when asked about the future to the franchise, and he dropped some information about his son in the movie potentially taking on the sequel, which there's not a lot of sand there in my opinion, and there's not a lot of chance that would go anywhere. But hey, it legitimizes this for the show, and we wanted to talk about Reign of Fire, so there you go. We can only speculate on what a sequel could have been.
Indeed, we can.
Do y'all want to do honorable or dishonorable on this one?
It's honorable.
For sure!
Honorable.
Even though it does slightly tease a future, I still think the story concludes on a satisfying note.
Well, yeah, because its individual arc finishes, and it leaves it open for a sequel, but it doesn't mean that there's going to be one.
Tease a future threat. Exactly.
Like the story's complete, but it also allows for another story to be told.
Yeah, and just to inform our audiences, when we do this, the honorable or dishonorable, it's basically to determine whether or not this movie stands on its own or not. And in this case, I think we're agreeing that it does.
Yeah,
And
as
that
a
means,
complete narrative.
Yeah, this is an honorable death for the Reign of Fire would have been franchise. So, all right, next week we are talking about Dragonheart. Y'all know this movie. Y'all remember this movie?
Yeah, dog. We'll save it for the next one.
You don't know how to do it, David. You forgot.
No. Not this time.
Stop.
All right, guys, stay tuned. Next week, Dragonheart.
Yeah, baby.
Goodbye.
Dragonheart.
When I'm running for my life, I generally don't look back at the plumbing.